let's set the stage for today's webinar. Your company has installed Aero in your company's method account, and your staff are performing their assigned tasks in Aero, and they are recording any other time they do outside of these assigned tasks in Aero. And your managers over on the Manage tab are watching the status of assigned work and are assigning new activities to staff to complete. So assuming that Aero has now been installed and in action, today what we want to focus on is when you perform work regularly and you want to schedule recurring activities. So today we're going to talk about recurring activities. One of the core foundations of Aero is to manage recurring work. So today we're going to take a look at how to set up an activity as recurring, how to manage or make changes to recurring activities, and then how to renew these occurrences for the next year or for the next period of time. So I want to start first with just a brief discussion of methods recurrence types. These are methods definitions. There are three types. The first one is called a one-time recurrence, and these are just single activities. They have not been set to recur, and method's word for this activity is one time. So this might be, you know, when you set up some project that you're going to do, you're not ever going to do it again, and you create this activity, you work on it, post your time against it, and you complete it, it's done. It's a one-time activity. The next type is called a series. When you take a one-time activity and you set up a recurrence pattern on it, that activity becomes the parent or master activity, and method refers to these as series. Now the third type of recurrence type in method is called occurrence. So when you've set a series, when you set a regular one-time activity to be a series, all of the, let's call them child activities, or the activities that are associated to this series, are called occurrences. So you may have a bunch of occurrences for, maybe you've set an activity or a series to be the third Tuesday in a month. All of those activities that show up on each of those Tuesdays are a recurrence type occurrence. So to summarize, the three types are one-time, series, and occurrence. And I wanted to bring those up because you'll see those words, those activity types. It's hard-coded. It's a part of method. So when you see that now, you'll recognize what those definitions are. So let's start with how to set up an activity as recurring. We're going to take a one-time activity and make it recurring. So here I am, I'm in Aero, I'm on the Manage tab, Manage Work screen. And I'm going to come here to this activity. We have an activity assigned to Robert to pay bills. This is a one-time activity, and I'll show you, so we'll click on this to go in to edit the details of the activity. Notice here in the upper left-hand corner, we have the client name, we have the name of the activity, pay bills. You can see that the recurrence type here is one time. So that's one way to find out what type of activity something is. So now we'll also look at, if you scroll down here to the bottom half of the page, you know, you have these tabs here on the bottom half. And on the Recurring Dates tab, here we see the method's recurring tool. When the recurrence tool is not in use, it looks just like a checkbox, just like it does here. Once you check this box, you can now use method's recurrence tool. Let me scroll down so you can see the full tool here. Everything within this outline here is methods recurrence tool. So let's talk about it and get to know it. The first thing about this is that, and I want to point out that this recurrence tool, you'll find this all over Method. If you're using Method CRM and you're over on the activity screen, you'll find the recurrence tool over there, and it looks exactly the same. So in this case, I want to scroll back up and point out that this activity is still of a type one time. Just because we checked the box does not mean that we've converted it to a series yet. But by checking the box, we've activated the tool so that we can use the tool. So the first thing you want to do when you're using the tool, and Method has numbers here, 1, 2, and 3. We're going to look at these 3 steps. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pick your basis. So let's say we want to do this once a week. We've got weekly selected here. The second step you're going to do is set your preference. Let's say we want to do this every week on a Wednesday. You could set it for every Tuesday and Wednesday, but I think we want to do this task every Wednesday, so I'm going to uncheck Tuesday and I'm going to click Wednesday. The next thing you do, this is still part of step 2, is that you're going to set the dates. These are the start and end dates for the recurring activities. Most of the time, I think more often than not, I use a year, but sometimes it's a different period. For example, maybe you have a 3-month contract with a client. Maybe you're setting up a weekly meeting that will occur every Wednesday, but only for the next 2 months. So there are lots of reasons why you may have a different period than a calendar year. But for the most part, I think generally I will set tasks for a recurring period within a year. Now, the dates that are showing here by default when we turned on this tool are whatever dates were set up on the activity. So you can change them here, that's fine, but just for fun, because we haven't done much here, let's look at a couple of things. I just want to show you how these dates relate to these dates up here. I'm going to turn off this tool. I'm just going to uncheck it. I'm going to change the activity to this other option, recurring series. It's going to give me a note, and it's going to tell me that it's not enough for me to just change the start and end date, that I actually need to go use the recurring checkbox below. That's fine. What this does is it looks at the first and last day of the year and sets it for us. I might add an hour. Maybe this meeting is going to take an hour, or maybe this task is going to take an hour. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to turn on Methods Recurring Tool again. You see that it has now added the dates that were up here, and it's got the times. So however you want to do it, you can just do it right from in here, or you could have changed the dates up here. I just wanted to show you the association that when you turn on this tool, Method grabs these dates above. So the next thing to know here is that you can put a limit on how many occurrences are going to be generated, but you also generally want to check this box that it is to be renewed. Unless you know for sure that that you're going to set up these few occurrences and that you're never going to renew this task, then maybe you would uncheck it. But for the most part, I find that I do check that box. Okay, so I want to scroll back up, though, just to keep showing you that this is still a one-time activity. We haven't really done anything serious to this activity yet. It is still just a one-time single activity, and we have only turned on the tool to start playing around with it. Okay, so now the next part here is the step 3. The choices here are that you can insert the recurring dates, and that's what we're going to do, and it's going to insert every Tuesday for every week between January 1st and December 31st of this year. So let's do that. Now what it's going to do is it's going to give us a message, because it's telling us, you know, January 1st of 2013 was a long time ago. Are you sure that you want me to make an activity for every week in 2013 since January 1st? If so, you have to hit cancel. Otherwise, the method is suggesting that you probably mean that you want to start from today's date and go every Tuesday once a week from today's date through the end of the year. So just for fun, I'll hit cancel to show you that if I hit cancel, click cancel to start scheduling from January 1st. I'm going to hit cancel and show you that either way it was going to generate some occurrences. It was going to create those activities. But because I hit cancel, it created one for every week starting at January 1st. Now, the other thing I can do is I can go, so we use that insert recurring dates button. The other thing I can do is use the delete selected button. So here, let's delete all these. We've got several pages of it were just generated, so I'm going to select all a few times and get rid of all those. Okay, so now we're going to do the same insert recurring dates, but this time I'm going to click OK to start scheduling from today's date. So depending on your situation, pick the appropriate option there. And here we've just got these activities now scheduled from December 10th on. I want to point out here that it's important that if this is a task, okay, in this case, this task is to pay bills for this client. We may have just gotten the client or just started doing this work this last part of 2013, but this may be a task that I want to renew into next year, 2014. And I may be paying their bills every week starting as soon as 2014 starts. If I had started this date with today's date and had December 4th through December 31st, when you automatically renew these activities, it would create for next year only tasks weekly in the month of December. So you do want to make sure that the start period is at the beginning of the year or contract period or what have you, so that in the subsequent years that all of these weeks or whatever the basis is are generated. Okay, so the next thing to look at is this checkbox is another way of doing things. Let's say I decide, you know, I want to change the time here to be 12 p.m., right? We're not going to be up at 12 a.m. 12 p.m. And I want to replace these activities below. I can either check all and delete them and then insert the new ones. That's one way, and that would work perfectly fine. But just for purposes of showing you this checkbox, if I check this, then when I click to insert these new recurring occurrences, it's also going to delete the ones that were there. I'm going to say OK to start scheduling from today's date. And now we've got, well, we've still got our one that was passed, but it replaced all the rest of them here. So this is helpful sometimes, depending on what type of occurrences you're setting up, whether you want to delete all the ones that are in there or not, or maybe you just want to pick and choose which ones you want to delete. Okay, so this was a run-through of these 3 steps. I just want to go quickly over these just to show you. You can come play around with this in your own method account, but you do have many other choices here to set your activities to be every 1 day, every 3 days, every weekday, and then of course if you want to do on weekly patterns, monthly patterns, yearly patterns, you can do variable patterns. This is a little bit limited to variable weekly patterns, but and then projects. But you can come, you know, you can read up. Method has a great help text about how to use all of these and use their recurring tool. So this is the way you set up the recurrences. Now, another thing that I want to focus on here is when you're adding a task, because we're just looking at how to make an activity recurring. We're going to come back and look at how to change it, but when you're sometimes when you're adding a recurrence, like what comes to mind for me is I have a payroll that we'll do for a client, and it's on the 5th and the 20th of every month. Sometimes when it's something that doesn't fit these standard preferences here, I could come in here and I could say, here, let's do it together. I'm going to delete everything we just did here. Pretend like this is something we want to do on the 5th and the 20th. So I want to come and I want to say I want to do this every month on day 5 of every 1 month. And I could insert, and I could say, yes, start from today, fine. So we should just end up with 1, December 5th tomorrow. And then I could come in here and say, now I also want to do the 20th of every month, and I could insert them. And we should end up with December 20th also scheduled. Okay, what I want to point out here, this is fine, that will work. These 2 activities will show up on Robert's list. But what I want to point out here that you can't really see is that what's saved now is the 20th. So in a future year, when you come back and renew this, this is going to create tasks for Robert to do every month on the 20th. The 5th is no longer saved here. So for renewal purposes, I did want to point out that what I do just as a practice is I'll come and make this one, I'll delete the 20th, I'll make one for the 5th, I'll save it. When you insert the recurring dates is when the save happens of the pattern. So actually, just to be perfect about this, I would delete all of those, and I would enter the one setting for the 5th, insert the date, and then I would come to this activity, okay, waiting for that, and I would come up to more and I would duplicate this activity and make a second one and schedule that one for the 20th. Okay, so I'm going to save and close this one, and we have this one now set to be a recurring task. So let's go look at, okay, let's go out through, there are a couple of things we could do. We could go to all series, because now remember that we changed this into a type series. So if I go, here it is, this pay bills task. If I go look at this one now, when I come into it, you can see the type of it as series. Okay, and it is scheduled for currently the 5th of every month. Set to be renewed, but through the year 2013, it is set for the 5th of every month. Okay, so that was a look at how to make a single, or methods term, one-time activity into a recurring activity. The next thing we want to look at is how to manage or change your series that you already have created. How to change your recurring activities. Sometimes I'll have, you know, maybe I have a task scheduled for a staff person, and you know, they can have various steps written on them, and maybe something about that has changed, or maybe the person who's going to perform it now is somebody else, and this person is always going to perform it, is going to change. So for whatever reason, if I want to go make changes not just to one occurrence, but to the entire series, let's look at how to do that. So as you just saw me do a minute ago, one thing to do in Manage Work is to come to the All Series grid filter. So I did that, and that's one quick way to find just the series, right? But I want to take us back. Let's go look at all activities. I've got this just looking for Robert. I want to go back and look at the regular tasks, because there's another way that I find myself, I use this way more frequently. I'll be looking at I'll be looking at the workload, and here Robert has the scheduled close period, and I go into it, and when I go into it, There, it's changed. I see that it's type occurrence. So remember, this is the third type, one-time, series, and occurrence. So occurrence tells me right away that this is the child or one of the activities associated to a series. This is one of the recurring activities. And what you'll notice here right away is that you have a link that you don't normally have when you're looking at a series or at a one-time. You have a link that says Go to Series. Before I click that, though, I do want to also point out that look here on the bottom half of the screen at the Recurring Dates tab. Here's that recurrence tool of methods. You can see that this checkbox is grayed out. That's another sign telling you that this is an occurrence. Because if this were a one-time, you know, that check mark would be live because we could make the one-time activity into a series. And if this were a series, it would be showing the live full recurrence tool. So let's do that. I'm going to click this link. I'm going to say Go to Series. And so now what I've done is I've come into this looking at one of the tasks that's part of a series, and for whatever reason, you know, we want to make a change. Maybe we want to reassign a bunch of them to someone else. So I'm going to go to Series, and this is going to give us a message. It's just telling you that this is going to set the screen's active record ID to the series. So I'm going to say OK, and you now see that this is the series, and it has loaded on the recurring dates. It's showing us this recurring tool. Now what you do have to do is you have to refresh the grid in order to see all of the occurrences here. But you may want to change one or two of them. Maybe Robert's going on vacation and you just want to change a few of these. There are a few fields that you can change right in here. You don't get all of the full fields that are on an activity. You'd have to go to the activity itself, but you can change a few things here like date and assign to. So you could make a few changes here. You could, maybe you want to come in here. I often find myself putting in the activity status not so that it only shows me the ones that are not started, and then I can more quickly just change a few of these who they're assigned to. But what if we want to change something that's not in this recurrence grid? So we're looking at all the occurrences and we want to change something about them that's not showing here. For example, maybe one of your steps have changed. Maybe you have some new link to add or some new thing you have to do that's part of this task. So you would add that, whatever the steps are to it, and you come back to your recurring dates. And what you want to do is select these remaining ones not started and delete them. See how these are scheduled for the 10th day of every month? I'm going to delete them and then insert. Or I could check this box and click Insert Recurring Dates. Either one will work, but I want you to watch this first line. Some of these will not disappear, and I'm going to talk about why in a minute. Whichever one you want to choose there, whether you want it to start back from the beginning of the year or not. Okay, so this is going to generate the new tasks, and it's going to delete any of the tasks that were in this grid or activities that were in this grid that had not been opened yet. So here's what I want to point out about this. Let me go back and show you the ones. All of the ones that were completed, those did not get deleted. When we said delete existing occurrences on insert, the completed ones did not get deleted. In fact, this May 22nd one, it's not started, so it's not completed yet, but it didn't get deleted either. We saw that it had activity status notes on it. Method has a way that it differentiates an activity, an occurrence activity, whereby if your staff have already accepted and started to work on this occurrence, if anyone has modified this occurrence in any way, in this case we can see that they added an activity status note, then it becomes it changed a little bit. It's an occurrence, but it's what they call a changed occurrence. And in that case, method doesn't want to take the chance that it deletes something that has some information added to it. So those also changed occurrences, anything that's changed, especially these where the status has changed to completed, just to put your mind at ease, these will not be deleted when you say delete existing occurrences on insert. Only the new untouched occurrences would be deleted on insert. So that's another interesting thing to know about the method recurrence tool.
If you go to the left side of your grid here, there's a box with a little V. It's right next to your checkbox on the left-hand side. So choose yes. So what I wanted to demonstrate was that by choosing yes, it will show you the ones that have been changed, and no will show you the ones that haven't been changed. And that's what that column is about.
That's a great tip, and that will make you feel better about which ones to delete or not, or which one's method's going to delete when you use this tool. Okay, so another thing I want to point out here, this has to do all over method, is there's a gear here on the bottom of the grid. Actually, I'm going to point this out when we get out on this. Let's get out of this task. So there we just looked at how to change recurring activities. You can, of course, pick any of the occurrences and come in and make a change that's only going to change that occurrence. Or you saw you can come into the occurrence and it'll show you that it's an occurrence, and there will be a link to go to the series, and you can come over here to the series and make a change to any of these details up here, billable, not billable, anything. And then you just come and replace the occurrences that are out there. Okay, so I'm going to close now. And the third thing we're going to talk about is how do we renew these recurrences for the next year? So, right, we're at the end of 2013. Many of us have set up all these series, and we've got these great recurring patterns all set up, with the right timing assigned to the right person with all their steps. How do we make it all happen again for 2014? So we're going to look at that. The tip I was going to show you in there is on any grids in method, there's a gear icon here in the bottom right. If you click that gear, it's going to show you all of the fields that this developer of the screen, whichever screen you're on in method, has added to this grid. Now, they may be hiding it because you can get too many columns on the screen and everything, it doesn't fit. But it's interesting to come in here sometimes if you're looking for some information and see if it's maybe hidden. So you hit this gear and you can find it. And just what I was going to show you is recurrence type is one of the ones on the screen. So if I click update here, I'm actually going to see that here if for whatever reason you wanted to come know that information on something. Okay, so grid tip. All right, moving on. We're going to look at how to manage your series and how to renew these for the next year. So now this part I'm going to talk about is specific to Aero. Everything else we talked about was basically to define and how to use methods recurrence tool. And we use methods recurrence tool right there in the middle of Aero. So we were looking at it inside of Aero. But this part here is a new screen or is a screen that's part of Aero. So you click this Manage Series here. It's found on your Manage Work screen. This is being published this week, so all of you should be getting it soon. And here, this is going to load a pop-up screen for us. Now, what we're looking at is simply a grid of activities that are only of the recurrence type series, right? So these are just our series. And in addition to that, this filter is showing us that these are only the series that had the checkbox to be renewed. You can also show any of your series that are marked not to renew. And you've also got these little quick tips showing you how many you have of each. And when you click on it, that's another quick way to filter right over to these not renewed or renewed ones. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the tools we have on each of these rows. You see these blue hyperlinks mean you can click it and it's going to do something. Okay, so the first one is Go To, of course. So you can probably guess this is going to pop up the same Edit Details window we were just been looking at. But you know, when you're on that Manage Series screen, there, you may want to come in to look at the details of this activity. So we put a quick link to get to it. The next thing you have is this Occurrences. Now what Occurrences does is it's just going to quickly, instead of going into Go To and scrolling to the bottom and clicking on recurring dates and scrolling down to this grid, it's going to show us this grid of occurrences. It's going to show that to us right on screen. So I'm going to click it here for this Adams Associates. There are 7 occurrences here. So I'm going to click that and it's going to just show them to us here. Maybe you're wondering, oh, did I renew these yet? Which ones are? So that lets you see that. And you can just simply click this box to stop showing it. But any of these you click, here, this one. Look, this one has 315. So you can see, you could go right through them. You can filter looking for something, whatever you're looking for. Okay, so that's a quick way to see the occurrences on the series. You've got this activity type showing. Now, depending on how you set up your company, some people are more or less descriptive with type. So you can click in and it's just going to show you a pop-up window that's telling you what the activity name is. So now I'll show you again on the grid gearbox. You can come, activity name is one of the hidden columns. It's just that many people have activity names that can get quite long, and it was making the grid really too large for the screen. So it's hidden, but of course if you want to come show it, do that. I'm going to close it for now. You can see the status of these. Most series are in a not started status because you don't actually start or work on the series ever. It's like the template or the master. And then you create occurrences and you work on and complete your occurrences, right? Or you also work on and complete your one-times. This is showing us the number of occurrences. And this is showing us, here I'll click occurrences again. This is going out and saying you have 7 occurrences and the one with the latest date, the last one scheduled is December 10th. So that's off. That's reading that. That must be a time change. Yay, 10th, 11th. And finally you have this link, renew this series. So if you click this, it's going to renew this series for whatever its start and end date had been. At whatever frequency you have it set. So of course if you want to change that or go into the details of them, you can go to and manage them on more of a detailed level. But if you know that you have a specific group of series and you just want to renew them for the next year or the next period, you can either go through each one and click renew this series, or you can come pick a batch of them. Let's do these top 2. The last ones are set for December 2013. So you could come, or you could select all, however you want to do it, and you can renew them in batch. So this is great because as you guys get to setting up more and more recurring activities, you have a lot out there on all different clients for all different assigned to all different staff and different frequencies, and to be able to come in here and renew them in batch is a great tool. So I just want to make sure that everyone sees this and uses it. I'm going to click Renew Selected. And now it's created these new occurrences going through 2014. Just like that. Another just little quick thing I wanted to show is if you do have some that are not to be renewed and you meant for them to be renewed, you could come here and mark them to be renewed, and that'll put them over here in your group, and then you can renew it from there. Okay, so that takes us to the end of everything that I wanted to show today. The real point I just want to get through is, we've been talking about recurrences and how to use them, but they're such a great tool for organizing your workforce. So hopefully everybody learned a little bit about how to use them today.